I don't even know what I was talking about. I came completely off the subject, man. It was supposed to be about how to strengthen family bonds. That's what I was supposed to be doing a video about. How do you strengthen family bonds? You know, we talked about this when I was talking about when you have conflict with folks and your friends, and that communication is the key. It's the same exact thing when you're dealing with family. Family, you can a lot of times take for granted because they're family. You know, you feel that they're always going to be there. They always should be there. And sometimes things happen where there's a fracture and there's some issues, and then the bond is not as strong as it used to be before. So this is where, if you have a fracture in your bond with your family members and you want to strengthen it, you have to confront that family member. You have to confront that family member. You have to speak about what the situation is and make sure that you both have a resolution to move forward. Because what happens with not clarifying what's going on is you tend to assume that each one knows which other side is, and whatever the person was believing, you tend to assume, you come up with your own idea of what you think that person is believing. And that's the wrong way to continue a bond, because it's going to break down. Because you're thinking one thing, the other person's thinking the other thing. It's not connecting. And so how you start to interact with each other, that's going to be where it starts revealing itself. We start revealing that, oh, wait a minute, I thought that you were believing this about me or feeling this way about me. But then, no, you're telling me these things and you're displaying. That's the part. That's the whole confusion aspect. So the first thing that has to be done, if you're trying to strengthen the bond in your family, is there always has to be communication. Always has to be communication. There always has to be accountability for your family members. If you are a person who stands on your morals and your principles, that you hold them accountable for whatever the situation is. That has to be very upfront. It has to be very apparent that that's what is going on, that you're going to hold these folks accountable. Because the other issue is that if all of a sudden they do something that goes against your principles, and then you come combative, now you're going to have this rift where maybe they didn't understand what it is that you're talking about and why you being so upset. And then that breaks it down as well. So it always has to be, there's always a constant communication that you should have with your family in order to strengthen that bond, to be as honest as you possibly could be. Even if you're the person who feels that you're being taken advantage of. Because like I said, as family members, or as family, we all feel somewhere along the line that there's something that we may be taken advantage of. This is what any thriving relationship needs, is the communication aspect. Now, if you want to be a family member who says, hey, you know what? My family has done everything possible for me and they've made me who I am. And so I'm not going to necessarily ever turn my back regardless of what the situation is. Then if you make that decision, then you stand on that. You stand on it and don't falter and flutter away later on because all of a sudden your family is not responding the way that you felt that they should. If you took that, mission statement and said, hey, you know what? Listen, regardless of whatever family, I'm going to be there for family. That's the issue that happens with a lot of folks and what breaks down with family is because you got family members who stand on that throne or stand on that bridge and they're like, hey, you know what? Listen, I'm holding down my family regardless. And the family doesn't reciprocate the same. And then that person starts to become upset. And then it's all this, stuff about, I'm tired of doing things for folks. Well, but you stood on that. If you stood on that, you got to stay on that. It is what it is. You stand on that. But you have to make that decision up front if you're going to be that type of person. So strengthening the family bond, there's just so many different intricacies that can happen with wanting to strengthen a bond with your family members. But you have to have the communication and you have to understand that if these were good family members, at times they unconditionally loved you. And when somebody unconditionally loves you, that's extremely powerful. It's something that you don't turn away from so easily, even if they have their shortcomings coming up in life. You have to try to put yourself in a mindset of, you know what, my family has been my family. They unconditionally love me and they took care of me and they did things. And yes, they've got some shortcomings. And, there's some things that I don't like, I disagree with. But it's that important for me to still be there for my family because I wouldn't be who I am. You got to figure out if that's significant. If your family members are that significant in your life, then you have to work on whatever's needed to try to strengthen that bond. Now, sometimes you can't do it because the other person is just not willing to play along. They don't want to do it. If they don't want to do it, that doesn't mean that you don't have love for them. You can love them from afar, from a distance. You could pray for them from a distance. Absolutely can do that. Praying strengthens bonds as well. Believe it or not. You can pray and strengthen up bonds. Sometimes there's just things you cannot do yourself physically that are going to make a difference with strengthening that bond. But if you pray and that person could go through some certain circumstances that maybe helps them, reveals to them that, you know what, I need to come back to you and I need to be able to be a better person to you, that can happen. That can absolutely happen. I had a situation like that with my father. Very, very deep past with my father. I would have to speak on a whole video about what occurred with my father, but very, very deep past. Very, very traumatic past. Serious, serious stuff. But what occurred was during my teen years, I blew up. And I had a whole conversation with him. And I let out all my grievances and all my issues with him. And from that day forward, he wound up changing. And we wind up having a better relationship from that day forward. Just because I let out all my grievances, all my anger, everything that I could remember that I was going through. I let all that stuff out on that phone call. And things changed. That's communication. Because sometimes people assume things and they assume the wrong things. That's why I say that you need to be able to speak about what the situation is to strengthen that bond with your family members. And on another note, sometimes you don't want to strengthen that bond with the family member. I got some family members right now. I'm not trying to strengthen no bond with them. Nah, because They kind of went against some of my morals, my values. So I'm not willing to entertain that. Not at this stage of my life. Maybe when I was younger, maybe so. But right now, no. Now, can we have a communicate? Can we communicate and can we talk and stuff? Yeah, we absolutely can. But our relationship will always be somewhat different. It'll always be somewhat different. Not the same as it was before. Could it change? Could it? It's not going to go back to what it was before, but could it change for the better? Absolutely, it can. But you got to be willing to have the meeting of the minds and make sure that you're aligned with each other. So, strengthen family bonds, confront them, have communications with them, be totally honest, hold them accountable, don't assume, make sure it's worth it. Make sure it's worth it. Worth your peace. All right? On that note, I got to go to the park like I usually do. I'm going to catch you on the next note. Peace out.